we go.
Farm Companion.
From live from
I was a little hot on these.
Yeah.
Farm Companion.
Casa de Paul.
Casa de Paul. The cabin of
Paul.
a la Paul. I believe is how you would say that.
Yes, that is right. So we are, this isn't technically live, but we're in Illinois this week. We made a trip out this morning, actually. So
Yeah, we did.
It's 8 o'clock. We left at 3 a.m. on Eastern time, so
if we seem a little groggy, we got the 3:30 wake-up call. We got the 9-hour trip. We got the couple miles in the boots, and we got the 3 Modelo's and a little dinner in the belly here from
little
the local
in the
spot.
belly. Yeah, the old walleye dinner will get you.
All ready for bed, but
yeah,
we'll power through.
Well, we were talking about it. I mean, part of it was just trying to figure out days we were going to get out here, but ultimately it was we figured we could do a farm companion before, but it's talking about the same stuff. So at least let's get out here, at least spend a day out here, and then we'd have some new stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
That was
we were going to shoot Friday, and then Emily's been sick off and on.
So we had to
work stuff, and pushing, and so we made it happen. But Friday was out, so because today's Thursday, we're driving back tomorrow, so we'll just bring the board, and we'll knock it out here.
And the headset. Yeah, so we got here around 12:30, give or take.
Yeah,
12:30.
Made good time.
Good timing. Got out here. I think it took all of 10 minutes to find the first shed, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. Are we over the 8 yet, or? I wasn't really keeping track.
Does deadhead count?
We got 2 sitting here. 1, 2. No, deadheads don't count.
I think we're at
unfortunately,
6.
technically. Sheds?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's better than I thought, but.
I think we're at 6 sheds.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we probably are.
Yep.
6 and then what? 3 deadheads?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we found our first shed in a cup bean field, which was kind of funny because we were both like, this just doesn't happen. And it was a good one. It was a 4-year-old shed.
You know how you always see stuff in the bean field and you're like, I better scan it just to be safe, and it's always like some bean stubble or something stupid. It was a freaking shed. First one I pulled
up. Just right in the middle.
And a good one. A good, 4.5-year-old, side.
Edward Skizzer hands.
So that was a good way to kick it off.
Yeah, no, it was great. So we found that shed. We went to the part of the farm, we call it the north part of the farm, which has the biggest block of timber first to spend the most time in. And so we found that on the way up. And trying to think, going through there.
This is a fork. This is the deadhead.
Yeah, we found the deadhead. So you guys have probably heard us talk about this deer. So this isn't from last year. It's 2 years ago. There was a 4-year-old mainframe 10 with a split G2 that we thought was
stud, mid-50s.
Yeah, mid-50s at least. I don't know. We didn't score it, but he ran in front of you and your dad multiple times on opening day. Eventually ran across the cut bean field with a neighbor and got shot at 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Well, this one, if you've heard me tell a story of that opening day, and it was like nuts, guns going off everywhere type of a thing. I ended up killing Floppy that morning, but this 4-year-old was like running does back and forth all morning, and it was cool, but it was stressful because, we heard the neighbor shoot.
Oh yeah,
at least 4 times. Like that, I could see the neighbor across the fence line, and he was like in a blind, and he was pretty close.
They drove down in.
Oh yeah, first. Yeah, I mean, that was first thing in the morning. I saw headlights coming down over. And
this isn't like right off the road. Like this is substantially off the road that they drove through the middle of the field.
It's out there. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's how you would get there if that's where you were going, So I knew they were there. And then I didn't know they had another guy, posted up further up the hill there. And so I saw this deer, running back and forth. And, you hear something? Oh.
I was just checking. Make sure it was recording.
All right, cool. So I jumped the fence, heard them shoot out of the blind 3 times, and then later in the morning, not that much later, heard the other guy shoot at least once to my memory. That was up further. And in hindsight, that may have been the guy that got him.
Very possible.
Yeah, I don't know, but
we thought, and we've said it, we're like that deer's laying dead in the ditch, which there's a ditch
for sure
on the neighbor's property to our east. He ran towards that, so we figured, he ran in there, dead.
Well, what happened was after, so that all happened, and then we had that encounter with Floppy, and I grunted him in and ended up shooting him, And then before we even went and recovered that deer, I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
Just check with the neighbor. Just check in, I guess. You know,
Yeah, see what happened.
Because we hadn't met him or anything. And that was last year, our first year owning the property, year before this past season. And frankly, I wanted to say something to him about being right on the line there. Because Dad and I were at least 150 yards off, but I could see they were sitting right on it. Just make the acquaintance, you know what I mean? And so I said something to him about it. I said, hey, I said it kind of like in a way that hopefully wasn't too like offensive there. I was like, oh, neighbor said there was somebody down here, sitting pretty close to the line here. Or whatever. Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, mustache. And I said, hey, I said, I saw you guys shot at that buck there. We saw him run across. He's like, oh yeah, couldn't get the gun up in time, And in my mind, I'm like, you shot 3 times. Like, what do you mean?
With a shotgun, probably.
And I was like, did you get him? And because I knew what deer it was, and they're like, no, couldn't get the gun up in time. That's what they said. And I was like, that deer's done. Like, he's dead. And we never saw him again.
They put one in the guts or whatever. Yeah, never saw that deer again. So that's why we assumed like he's dead.
Yeah, I figured he was over in that ditch there or whatever. But found him right in our main block of timber there today. Mid-50s, probably 4-year-old deer. Nice deer, I don't blame anybody for shooting at him. So
no. Well, we didn't shed hunt last year, so if people are like, wow, how'd you guys miss him? We didn't shed hunt last year.
No, we didn't get it. I was just laying right there. And frankly, there was another one, 5-year-old, maybe 100 yards from there, that was from this past season.
From this year. A deer that we saw a lot last year. We found his shed.
Yep, almost ran over it.
Yep, and then saw him in the summertime, and then it was like we never really saw him again. Like maybe glimpses, or maybe that was him or wasn't him.
Yeah, never really pegged him. We're like, we think that was him, but like we need to get a better look, and we never did. And
because when we came out to hunt here after Iowa, he was like one of the deer on the list as a 5-year-old. We're like, hey, we could kill that deer, and I'm like, I don't know the last time we've seen that deer. And then we got pictures of like maybe it was him. When we found him, like he was definitely out of velvet, had definitive signs of rubbing. So I would assume that he died at least in October, if not later.
It would have been later. Oh, for sure. Because I think we saw him the night of, or night before the first night that we hunted, which would have been November 7th or 8th.
Yeah. Yeah. So he made it through that. Maybe another gun victim. We don't know. But
I don't know.
He was
dead. Made it that long or not.
He was dead in that block. And a really nice 8-point. We haven't scored it yet, but we're thinking like anywhere from 44 to 47, probably 144 to 147 as a mainframe 8.
It's funny that we argue about that. We're always like, I don't know. I think he's 144. You're like, I think he's 146. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, so we don't know, but a really nice deer. So kind of a couple of ways. It sucks that obviously he's dead, but one, finding him and being able to close the story on both of those deer is a big one for us. And then I think also just that deer coming back for a second year, that's really the first year that we've seen history of like he was there at 4, he came back at 5. Because we've been talking about this turnover of deer a lot.
Well, there's others, right? I mean, the 9 is one.
Yeah, I guess
4 to 5.
Yeah.
And we've got some 2 to 3. And do we have any 5 to 6?
I mean, Crazy Horse, I guess.
Crazy Horse.
Which,
yeah, and unknown.
We went through his territory today. Didn't find anything. Didn't find any. I guess we found one old deadhead down there, but we didn't find any sheds in that bottom.
No, but found that sign in those beds that were like,
clearly
it's got to be part of the puzzle here. Like,
yeah. So we went through that. We ended up finding this deer, which is a 3-year-old 8 that he was all over the property this year, so
nothing crazy.
Nope, nothing crazy. And then deer that we've been calling kamikaze here.
Yeah, this is the one here.
One of the
kamikaze 8. This is the deer that I passed on. It would have been the second trip there. Yeah,
late November,
around Thanksgiving time. There, he walked across the CRP field, and
it was second gun season. Because he had got shot at twice by the neighbor just before he walked.
Yeah, I heard the neighbor shoot, and we texted him. He's like, I just missed a big 8-point. And then here he came walking,
hit every camera on the way down.
Clear across the farm. And he never stopped either, man. He just was, the rest of the season, he was all over the farm. And
that deer daylighted more than any other deer on the farm.
Yeah, so that's a stud. I think that's a 4-year-old 8. We'll put a tape on him, but I think he's low
40s.
Low 40s, probably 42, something like that. So he'll be a good one to chase. That's pretty cool to find. And he was laying right next to some cut corn.
Right
I mean,
there.
just text, but like we never find him in the cornfield. Frankly, it's hard to bring yourself to walk them half the time just because there's so much stubble and stuff. But we walked down. We were gonna grab a camera and walked over a rise. And I remember
They
turning around. I was like,
yeah,
right
they
there.
chisel plowed the whole area, and they left. There was a part that was left standing for us, and it was that's what. And we had seen him holding this side late. The other side had already been down on the ground. So
Yeah.
Who knows where he dropped?
And
that.
we walked where I felt like that would have been today. So I don't know.
Yeah, needle in the haystack on some of these things. So we found those. We found a small broken one.
Found a
oldie.
weird one. I don't have it here.
Oh yeah, the weird
it reeks.
2-year-old.
I found this weird. I do think it's off a 2-year-old, but he got some kind of deformity, and he's like, he looks like my left hand here. He's like kind of like turkey footed out, and I was carrying it, and when I picked it up, honestly, I smelled something, but I thought it was the big rotting like log that it was next to. It smelled like a fermenting like peat moss or something like that.
Owl urine.
Fermenting owl urine. It doesn't taste as good as you'd think, but I'm carrying it for more. I'm like, I'm still smelling that. Like, that's weird. And I like look at this horn a little better, and it's like, sure enough, it's got a big hole in it.
Straight through it.
And inside, it's like you can see it's like rotting.
Yeah,
and
there were bugs and stuff.
There's some
like
bugs
weird
and
in
stuff in there. I was like, oh, like that's
it was weird.
Gross. So I hung it on a tree, and we'll grab it. And that's an outside shed. But.
Yeah. So we found that one. You found that oldie that had the split that was all chewed up. That thing was like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Found that one as well. And
so 1, 2, 3, 4.
The little
5.
forky 6.
6.
I think that's it.
Where's 6?
We're
6 or 7.
We're
maybe.
on the under right now.
6 or 7.
If you remember from the podcast,
we'll find 1 or 2 more tomorrow.
Yeah, probably. We've got a couple ditches to walk, and then we found those 2 dead heads. We found a third that's just a.
We found 4 dead heads.
Oh yeah, we found that shitty one that was broken. Yeah, 4, and that one was.
Which one?
How old.
Which one?
Actually, no. We found more than
5?
4. 5 dead heads.
So you got the one by the little water hole at the end, in the cornfield. You got the 2 big boys in the timber.
Yep, the one I found in the ditch that was all broken up, an old one. And then that one that you found or spotted by the
I spotted that thing from a mile away.
cottonwood.
I'm pretty good at seeing horns.
That was good, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. So yeah, I mean that's been the story of out here. I mean, a ton of sign. I mean our sign has been like off the charts.
Well, it's really fun to get to see, some of the inner workings, I guess, some of those parts that we've never just like really dove in on. So it was cool. It's good to see. A lot of it was affirmed. I think what we felt like we already knew. And I don't know. I mean, do you think, was there anything that like surprised you about the farm? Like you're like, oh, I didn't know that it was this way.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, the southern part of the farm, which had standing beans and standing corn, seemed to have less sign than the northern part, which is where we found the deadheads in most of the sheds.
Which is odd because all your grain fields. Yeah. A lot of the standing like winter food was on the southern end of the farm.
We have that small clover plot that we've talked about that's been getting pounded. And we have a brassica plot that was basically torched. And other than that, there's no real food over there. But all of the deer sign and all the deer, most of the sheds that we found and those deadheads were there.
Yeah. So
and yeah, I mean just walking through the trails and the rubs, everything about that whole north side was like spot on. And it wasn't that the south side didn't have that. It just wasn't nearly as prevalent. Like it had a lot of deer trails and stuff, but I didn't see the rubs and scrapes and stuff nearly as much. So I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of weird with it having most of the food down there. And clearly they smoked the corn. And
I wonder if like we don't really have a good green source on the southern end of the farm like we do on the north, which seemed like a lot of them were, camping out around. So yeah, I'll be curious to see if that affects it. And I also don't think that we got the snow, frankly, but really just the weather conditions to push them on that grain hard.
No,
we had a lot left over, and which is
Well, and I mean like this deer we know was like all over that south part of the farm. Like
the whole
consistently.
farm. But yeah,
he was there a lot on the south side of things, and so was the 9, which we didn't find his shed.
Yeah, that is weird.
You know, he held pretty tight there, and there was a couple. Yeah, there was several of them. There was several 3-year-olds that I thought for sure because they were in that clover.
That wide one. Yeah.
I mean, we just haven't come across them. Doesn't mean they're not out there. We won't trip on them tomorrow, but yeah. So I mean, I think that's part of the strategy now on that south side is tomorrow we're gonna frost seed a large area that we had in beans this year. That will be a big clover plot. We're going to change another bean area in Nebraska, and then the 3-acre cornfield is going to go to beans. So, I mean, we'll have now a grain and green source over there, as will we on the north side, where we're going to take the brassicas and the beans, see how they do, and keep our clover plot. So, yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing it was funny because we were talking about like, we thought about bringing our brush pants, and we're like, that's not it, dude. It was like Jagger Thorn City.
Yeah.
I mean, we were getting ripped up in there.
Yeah. Not that would have been any better, but it's also like I wouldn't want it to be any later in the season here because
it started to green up a little bit.
Multiflora and stuff is starting to green
up.
But yeah, there was a lot more briars and stuff than I thought. So, and I don't know how to feel about that. Like it's dense and it's dense cover. It's like they definitely are obviously using it. It's like, but I don't know if at some point you want to treat. I mean, certainly if you're going to do like some TSI or timber
that multiflora would explode.
Yeah, and I don't know how I've never heard anybody give like a really good like here's how you take care of multiflora in the timber.
Yeah.
Without like spot spraying it.
Yeah, you're just going to have to nuke the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that it also comes down to I think just like even that 5-year-old, like we didn't see him a lot. He clearly felt safe in that block. That's where we found him dead. But I think that if you start to look at that side of it, there's just a limited amount of cover that can happen, especially when the crops are off. And so like they just like that's why when we talked about it walking through there, I'm like, maybe there are more deer than I thought that were in here because it just everything is tore up. Like it's cattle trails through that stuff.
I think they really just have their little pockets that they cling to. Like I think they'll just associate to like a really, really small core areas, and obviously some will travel, but
sure. But yeah, I mean the pockets that they were in were clearly, highways through there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like I know, all bucks included. Like we have a lot of unique bucks on that property, which I would assume then there's a bunch of does on that property too, and so. I think just the way that it sets up is like there's no real field for like observation, like pure like, oh, wow, there's 30 deer in that field. But like when you see that 1/4 acre clover plot with 15 to 20 deer in it, that's like, that's not every deer from the farm. That's all those deer in that area definitely piling in. So, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting next year. I mean, we've got corn around as the main cash crop. We'll obviously have a lot of green and we'll have a lot of beans on there and some corn on there as well. But yeah, I don't know what to expect. It's our first repeat year from a crop rotation, right? We've had corn the first year, beans this year. Next year we'll have corn again. Yeah. So do we see some kind of sign and trend like that? We were talking about a really big 8 that we got on camera February 2nd that we had not seen all year. Never saw again either. And it's like that deer definitely has resemblance to a deer that would match him from last year. And it's like, and that deer was there for several days. We saw him multiple times on camera. So, and that was in October, I think.
Yep.
So
October, yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird to see that. And, can you start to build trends with that on the farm or not?
I feel good about our food rotation for sure. I think that like, we've got that nailed down fairly quickly here. I think we have some work to do on some of the CRP fields still.
I will say, though, and we beat it to death on the last handful of podcasts and Farm Companions, is our first year switch looked really good in a lot of places. Like going into it being like, I don't know, like we'll see foxtails everywhere.
I say definitively, I know what it looks like now.
Yeah, we can see it.
That was like the whole first year. You're like, is this switch? Is this switch?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
We're past that.
At least now, I can't say I'm past it completely, but for the most part, I know it when I see it.
Yeah, it looked good. And I mean, and it was, not necessarily from a field standpoint or anything. Like we did most of ours for like insulation to the wood lines.
Mm-hmm.
So just to have that extra buffer between our fields and those woods where these deer are bedding and stuff, just because they are tight fingers and stuff like that. In most cases, there's not a lot of depth there. As a Sturgis would say, like, well, what's that depth of cover? There isn't much. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Like just with how the blocks are.
Yeah.
So, just trying to insulate that more and more so those deer feel comfortable in those drainages. And we found how many different beds at like the head of a drainage or on a point right by a drainage or
mm-hmm.
something. And it's like,
mm-hmm.
The more that deer can feel safe and secure there, he's not going to be bedded far when he gets up to move in an evening.
Well, and now that we've gone and walked it all, actually, I think, our ideas will start to reel, on where we can do that. I think there's definitely some chemical application and eventually some burning, in the future that will help the existing CRP that's there.
Agree.
Just to kill out some of the cool season stuff that's in there. And woody brow set that back too. And
we are seeing a lot of that, the canary grass and stuff
some of
like that.
Coming into.
Yeah, it's popping right away. So it's like, we've got a handful of weeks here or more, several weeks that we can treat that stuff without affecting those warm season grasses because of soil temps and when they're going to pop. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a learning phase, I think. This farm is very different than I think all of our stuff back home, just in terms of how it's set up and the structure. And, even just coming over here, we're talking about, okay, like, what's the potential? Well, we feel good there's 3 or 4 deer that could be 5 or older that could be there this year. And then it's like, well, what about this deer? Does he show back up? Or what about this deer? Did he make it through? And like before you know it, there's 7 or more 5-plus-year-old deer that could be, I'm not saying on the farm, but could be using
overlap.
the farm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what else could you ask for with 140 acres?
Sure.
So
yeah, it's looking good.
Yeah, it's looking good. I think
it's fun to be building some history with some of these deer. Like in year 2, it's like, cool. Man, to see that deer from the stand and to pass them and to be able to find a shed
we have that deer on camera from the year before, right?
We do.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't think nearly as much. I mean, not that we weren't paying as much attention to him, but I looked back and found some, and he was like a 125-inch 3-year-old probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, building this history and just starting to get to understand the farm, and it seems a bit silly, but 2 years of owning the farm, and today was the first day that we really walked most of it, and we've got a little bit to cover tomorrow in the morning as well. Yeah,
it was pretty cool just to see sign like that and see to know that you're in really good deer habitat, and I was like, dude, we own this.
It's a good farm.
This is our farm. This is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of joked, but we've walked enough farms to be like, this farm sucks. This farm feels like it's got a lot of potential.
It's a good farm.
It's coming together. And the neighbor thing is everybody deals with it, and so we'll figure that out as we go, and it could change next year, without any input or influence from us. So yeah, we'll just have to keep doing what we do best, and that's just making the farm as best as possible. We don't pressure it at all. We're just not here.
Dude, also, some people may be interested to know about, so there's a house on the farm that we bought, and the guy that we bought the farm off of still lives there. Older gentleman. He's been there since the 40s.
Carl.
He's in his 90s, Carl. And we have been looking at, we were made aware of a hole next to the foundation, and we're like, ugh, has to do with insurance and future financing and stuff like that. So we're we need to look at that. But knowing man, foundation, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean if we want this thing to actually be a structure that's usable in the future,
you could be talking tens of thousands of dollars potentially for structural
repairs.
So, not that I was on edge about that, but I was anxious to see how that was going to turn out, and we had a contractor come out and look at it with us today, and fortunately,
best case scenario, I think.
Best case scenario, there's no structural anything needing to happen there. It's just we basically had a downspout disconnected, which is feeding into some groundhog holes that are there,
and it's just eroded it away and leached into an old part of the foundation that really isn't even a support part of the foundation anymore. So
a little bit of dirt work, a little bit of quickcrete. And we'll have that guy do some siding work for us too, and that house will be freaking whipped right back into shape. So
future camp.
Yeah.
So it's that's probably the hardest part. I mean, obviously we all want to make efforts on the land side to continue to improve it, but you can let the land do what it does, right? It's the houses and the buildings.
How much would you have spent on the foundation? What would be your maximum? My wife does this to me all the time. She's like, what if your dog needed a surgery? How much would you pay to save his life?
Yeah. You just look at him and you're like,
What if today he said, hey, foundation, not after we'd seen it, but like we saw it and it was bad. He's like, hey, 12 grand.
I think that would have been, I don't know about that. It's maybe a $50,000 house.
I know.
Maybe.
I know. You spent 12 to save 50?
No, I think if it would have been, if it would have been north of 10, I would just say we're digging it out by hand. We'll see what we get into from there.
Yeah.
Or try to do some support basically from ourselves.
Yeah. Well, knowing what it was, part of me was like, and it ended up being like a $2,500 bill. So we're like, okay, that's
we'll take that.
Well worth it. Part of me was like, there's no structural anything here. You know what I mean? I was like, we could just fill in that hole. We could. And call it good.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean,
fix the downspout.
Right before I got there, the downspout was disconnected to the pipe leader.
Here's the problem.
And I put it together, and they're like, yeah, like clearly, like this was just fixed. I'm like, yeah, like a minute before you got here. Like literally, I was out there with a knife, like cutting roots off of it to like put it in there. So
like this is still green.
Yeah, I got it done. So. Well, it was better when I went to the basement and I looked, and none of the like actual foundation that mattered was like pushing or anything. I was like, okay, like we're probably in a better situation.
Man, that house is going to end up being a big win. It's like when we came to look at this property originally, I think the guy even said like it's not really even worth looking at. Like it's not.
We asked about the valuation to it. He's like, there is no value.
No value.
And then the appraisal came back at 50, I think, for it.
I don't know. Did they praise just the house exactly?
It's in the line item. It may have even been more than that. It might have been 100 now that I think about it.
I think it's worth that.
But yeah, and so I remember
it's a nice house.
Coming back, and I'm like, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's a solid farmhouse, 2-story farmhouse with 4 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And 1 bath.
Yeah. That's what they all were back in the day.
So, I mean,
with a 20-year-old foundation, that's a big part of it. They
updated the whole foundation on that. It's got a mud room and stuff. So
old laminate and like wood panel walling and stuff. But we'll probably end up replacing all that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's just camp house. So yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, that property is really starting to come together, and I think that we've got a good plan. We'll get some frost seed. We're gonna use Jeff's Pure Wildlife blend on that clover for reseeding the clover we have established, and then establishing that new spot in clover as well.
And
then
mow the corn, walk the rest of the ditches.
That's it.
Hit the road.
Yep,
quick and dirty.
Be back in probably May to drill and spray, I would assume.
You would assume correctly. I think that's right. Yeah.
So, anyways, farm companion on location.
Yeah.
On location.
Easy peasy, man.
We do this isn't like we do have deer camp. Paul is cool enough to let us stay here for deer season.
Thanks, Paul.
So, yeah, he's watching. He gets it.
It's a good spot.
He gets it. So,
until Carl's ready to give us our house back. Someday.
So anyways, we appreciate everyone listening to Farm Companion tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Farm Companion.
Take me on down the river where the guilt can't fight.